Welcome to Condition Red Radio. I'd like to give a big shout out to the Memphis Murder Men. That was Devil's Night in the USA off the album Kill Punk Rock. And I really appreciate the guys letting us use it. Condition Red Radio, we're in the studio and via Skype, all plugged in and sounding official. We've got Nigel February, the founder of the Piper system. And what I always like to do with people is if you could just go ahead and tell the people listening to this podcast, both of them, a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe just a brief explanation of what Piper is.
Okay, so I've been in the martial arts for about 30 years. Started with kickboxing, kung fu, and then aikido. And when I started training Silat in 1993, I was one of the only people in the country that was doing Silat. My late father actually taught me Silat, which again was a very private thing. I don't know where he got that from, but I have, again, because he was a professional musician, so he knew a lot of, I would say different kinds of people, visiting the country. I mean, he played with Cliff Richard, the Shadows, Percy Sledge, so he was backup for all of those guys. And then, of course, he had lots of dealings with their security bouncers. I know he was trained by an Iranian guy called Beiruz, who was the bodyguard to the Shah of Iran. So, because I remember this Beiruz used to be my babysitter when I was, still in diapers. And so that's as far as I can go back, because both he and my mother didn't talk much about this guy. And but of course, I started training with him, and then that's when I realized that the way that knife defenses are being repackaged in the martial arts, once you import them, it doesn't resemble the attacker, locally. And I wondered why none of these why it doesn't look the same. And that's when I realized that when I was doing Silat, when they were doing these types of postures, I was wondering, but, it looks familiar. And that's when I started researching and finding out that there was a certain trend. And then there was a pattern amongst the gangsters. It wasn't just something random, it wasn't just a random overhead, knife attack in reverse grip. It was actually a patterned cultural thing. They did that on purpose, and they did it in that sequence. And of course, that's when I started realizing I think I should look into this. And again, we mustn't detract from the fact that I'm a martial artist. I still am. I still love empty hand. I still love different dabbling with different systems. I was even teaching capoeira for I think 10 or 11 years. So I just love that side of the martial arts. But when I started, doing that research, I then started finding out about my father's family, them being Native American. I was 16 when I found it out, and then found out that his late father, whom I never met, they were the product of a second marriage, which meant my grandfather had a wife, 2 daughters. She died, and then he remarried, and then he had 6 kids. So my dad was the eldest of 6 kids. I didn't know about, my grandfather had a previous life, and he was a butcher, So he was a butcher, he was a butcher for many years before my father was born.
So it's almost in your blood.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, is that if you look at the gap in age between myself, my father, and then my father and his father, there's a generation missing, because my grandfather would have been 119 years old today had he been alive.
That's crazy.
And then, because he was 45 when my dad was born, is the eldest. So, so he was still, his dad was born on the island of St. Vincent. That's where the Arawak tribe is from. Those guys from that Mel Gibson movie Apocalypto. Mm-hmm. It was those South American Indians, cannibals. And he was my grandfather had 3 sons with a second wife. Father was the eldest. all three sons have now passed on. The second one, and they were all fighters, all of them. They found, because my grandfather was a very violent man. My father was, I used to call him a smart, violent man.
It's the most dangerous type.
Yeah, my father was bigger than he's bigger than me, bigger than his siblings, but you'd still jump you from behind. He'll still ambush you. The middle brother, he died in 1982. 60 guys killed him.
Wow.
He was involved in it was two gangs fighting, and he thought that they were there for his father-in-law. In other words, he stuck his nose in an actual gang fight, and 60 guys shot, stabbed, hacked him to death. He kind of died the Rasputin death. Gregory Rasputin, the guy that was involved with the Romanovs, he had the Rasputin death, but he killed 3 guys with his bare hands, and he hospitalized 6 critically before he died. So
he went out. He definitely went out swinging.
Dude, that guy, he was.
He put up a good fight.
And so, that is my family's history. But I just want to let you know that they were all crazy. And when my life started, as a orthodox martial artist.
Right.
I loved the kickboxing. I loved the health aspects, because these guys would fight, and I didn't think it was healthy the way they did what they did. But that forced me to start spending time with my father in how they used knives to kill animals, because my grandfather used to slaughter his own animals for his butcher.
Yeah, and Josh, you might not know something, but I know you know about the Piper, you know about the Sealot background, but Nigel surprised me. Nigel has got some slick catch wrestling too.
Really?
Yeah, he pulled it out of the bag one time. We were doing a little training, which is pretty cool to see.
So the question is, did he get you?
It wasn't like that. I tell you, he got somebody. I won't say who it is. I don't want to embarrass the person. He twisted somebody up really bad. And I'm not gonna go into it.
All right. So Nigel, what would you say was the catalyst to start studying the techniques of the Cape Flats criminals that led to the creation of Piper?
I was getting mugged. I just wanted that to stop.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I led, my story with what we call a badass superhero expose, which was my family, my father, them. But for me, it was a case of I just didn't like being bullied, and I didn't like being mugged, and still studying a knife. You study a knife defense, and then discover that, when you're being accosted, when you're being mugged, they still wipe you out, and I realized that these guys knew what they were doing, and that's when I started dabbling. And then my father would then come in and show me what we call the killing techniques, which is what you learn when you have to slaughter animals, because they used to believe that if you want to know how to use a knife against a human, you should first kill an animal.
Most definitely.
A lot of people don't like to hear that, right? But unfortunately, that is a universal thing. I mean, if you speak to Ed, he'll say the exact same thing that happens in Mexico. Then he'll say, there's a guy I spoke to Belton in Seattle, and he's Filipino, and he says that's exactly what his uncles and his father them did in the Philippines. It's in every culture.
Right.
So that's a worldwide thing, then.
Yeah, it's a worldwide thing. So what I realized is that when I did this study, it took me further away from the martial arts as what I understand to be an orthodox skill set.
Right.
Where we were heading into the world of ambush, predator, intent, kill. Not fight, but kill. And so I had to start learning to do both, because remember, there was no way I'm going to leave, what I was doing just for this knife research, because I don't carry blades. So this research was supposed to just be for about 3 years, and then everything ends.
And it just didn't.
And again, I wanted to be the orthodox martial artist, and it's like my father was very intent on having me, go through a proper tutelage. I mean, I learned a lot of the catch wrestling because he was a wrestler and he was a boxer. But again, we were two different people, because I would learn from losing. Like if somebody fights me and they win, I learn.
Mm-hmm.
My dad hated losing. He hated losing at every game. Like chess, he teaches me to play chess. I end up, winning him, but I didn't know how that happened. And then he will, just accidentally knock the board over. I learned that he doesn't like losing. Because when I enjoyed the catch wrestling, when I enjoyed the grappling aspect, what he would do is, if I would ask him, how do you get out of this lock? Then he takes a lighter and starts setting my clothes alight. It's like, that's how I get out. So it took me years to figure out what type of mindset I was dealing with. So he told me, he says, and which is something that, I'm applying now, is what I learned through this research, which I later called Piper, was you need to be ruthless. You have to be ruthless. He says people are scared to cross that line. He said, that's the only difference. He didn't give me anything else. He says, your grandfather, your late grandfather would slaughter animals. You would literally just look at whatever cow or sheep or whatever, and you would just stick the knife into the animal's throat. Again, I speak as, that's what he did. That's not something I would do. I wouldn't even consider doing it, but I'm just saying that it's something that it took me a long time to understand what he meant. We play catch wrestling, which is it's a physical skill. It's an activity. It's fun. You can always improve. But what that man was doing was, he showed me the difference between what, play martial arts is, or play fighting, and what happens when someone's life's on the line. When you're ruthless, your techniques and tactics change, because certain things will be removed. And Piper, if you look at the Piper system, there's probably only 5 things. It just contains 5 things, and that's it. It doesn't have a repertoire of moves that takes years to master.
So what would you say are some of the martial arts that influenced Piper?
Well, if you go on the Piper page currently, you'll see there's a lot of, there's been a lot of new material coming up from the Zulu aspect, or the Zulu part of South Africa. And
you mentioned that in the class.
Yeah. The Zulus are on the eastern side of South Africa. They predominantly from what we call the KZN, the KwaZulu-Natal section. And they're starting to come out with how the tribal, fighting has actually influenced the knife culture, in their different regions. In Cape Town, because of the Malaysian and Indonesian community that's been there since the 1500s, they obviously brought Silat with them. So you have the Malays, and then you have these migrant black workers from the different tribes, what we call the Eastern Cape, with the Xhosas, the Sothos, the Basotho clans. We got about 26 different tribes in South Africa. So all of them started moving towards towards Cape Town, because that's where the Dutch, the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese had all their, had the ports and the harbors set up, because that's what they were. The Dutch East India Company set these places up so that anybody that passes the Cape of Good Hope, from the Atlantic into the Indian Ocean, that these were areas that they could refill or replenish their fresh vegetables, fruit, water.
Gotcha.
So there was a lot of trade areas happening at the harbors. So everybody from the interior would move to the harbors. But now when you do that, you start mixing with different cultures now. Now it becomes a melting pot.
Right. So it was just kind of like the perfect storm. You've got this big trading port, and you're just getting all these influences from basically all over the world.
Yes.
Right. So Cape Town's like the gas station of the ocean for the southern region, I guess.
Right. Now that's really cool, though. So you would say the main 2 influences were, would you say that it's some form of Silat, and then the Zulu stick fighting is probably very prevalent in there too?
Yeah, and the spear, and what we call the assegai or the spear fighting. You know, if you look at piper, the side stab is basically taken from your the way the Zulus use the spear. Mm-hmm. You know, the even the way the spear was designed, it was to hit the pericardial sac under the left nipple. So that's exactly why it fits so nicely.
Yeah, that's awesome. So here's a question for you. So when you're putting this together and you're kind of taking different techniques and you're formulating what later would become piper, how are you finding these people? Like if somebody's like using these techniques on the street and you're like, well, I've seen this guy use a side stab, I've seen somebody use this overhead stab. Where did you find the people that were like, all right, this is how you do it, this is how you set somebody up, this is how the technique works? So how are you finding those teachers?
Well, it's your friends, the people in the neighborhood. I grew up in 26th Avenue in Alces River, which was one of the knife capitals of the world. In 1991, it had the highest stab rate in the world. That was UN figures. And you're speaking about So my family, I had cousins who knew how to use the knife. Besides my father. You had people that you grew up, and even at school, kids would bring knives or the gangsters would just, wander onto the school grounds. So at any point, there was coming home, you'd see, knife fights happening, or in other words, when gangsters fight each other. Being mugged, you don't get into a knife fight, you're getting mugged. Okay, right. But when gangs fight, that's when you'll see a 1-on-20 or 3-on-1. Type thing happening, or 5-on-7 situation, because back in the day, gang fights were, very cordial. One gang would actually send a letter to the other gang, and then these guys would march. It's like it was the most strangest thing ever. Like we come home, and you see 13 or 15 gangsters march, but it's like they're walking towards the field, but they're quiet. You're thinking, oh damn,
it's on.
10 guys that can mug me, because you could actually see the machetes is carried up the sleeve, it's on the pants leg, and these guys would like be limping towards us, and they focused. So I'm thinking I'm gonna get mugged. I got no money, and then these guys wouldn't even make eye contact, and then my buddy would say, "No, it's gang fight." So they can't walk, and then they meet on the field, and then it's Mel Gibson all over again. They. Start fighting.
I've got to know what this letter says. It's like, to whom it may concern, you're about to get stabbed.
This is the corner of 17th and Martin Luther.
So I asked this was my best friend at the time, because he just lived about three streets away from me. We were in the same. We were in the same grade, same class, and then. His section of Alces River had it was like it was one road that kind of separated the two areas. So he was living on the border. So his area would have a lot more fighting. Because it's in a main road, and then there was this island separating the two lanes. So it's on the island. The island was about, say, 4 feet in width. Obviously, it's about a couple of miles long, and the guys would have actual battles on the island, trying to cross the road. And then he would say, no, they have a letter. And I was always so surprised. I was like, those dudes are illiterate. Obviously didn't finish.
Fucking crazy.
They obviously didn't finish school. I mean, that's why you join a gang. You don't join a gang when you have a PhD. So I was like, what did you say in the letter? I'm actually was interested, like, what did you say?
That's what I want to know. I have a copy of that letter.
I haven't, because what they do is they communicate with, by whistling. So they'll stand on street corners and they'll whistle in certain ways, and you'd actually understand, like, it's if you look at the Avengers, it's that I am Groot thing. It's probably like that, They whistle, and then the guy whistles back, and you immediately understood, that sentence he just said. And that's how we knew when curfew started at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. was, you don't go outside because when they start whistling, it means, stuff's about to go down. And but that's generally what it was like before firearms started becoming more prevalent. It's that everything was blade orientated. It was machete, it was knife. I mean, we all grew up playing soccer in the road, and you'll see the gangsters just chasing each other. So I experienced a lot more gang on gang violence than I did being mugged.
Right. That's one of the things that I don't think people understand, or maybe they don't know much about the Cape Flats, but people are always like Filipino martial arts. You want to learn how to use a knife, but people have to understand that like South Africa, like the stab capital of the world, and it's not changing. Like people are still getting stabbed all the time. I think you would be hard pressed to come across any place in the world where it's just every single day. And I talked to Nigel the other day, and one thing that I thought it really stuck out to me was the fact that when you say you took Piper was basically these gangster techniques, these criminals had this little system that, they had different techniques, and he kind of formulated it. But there's a video clip where a French tourist is in the Cape Flats and he gets stabbed. Someone stabbed him and robbed him. And when he did, it was 100% textbook overhead stab. Boom, hit him right into the subclavian, hit him, boom, dropped him, ripped off his bag, and just took off down the street. But it looked like, if you watch that guy, you'd be like,
that guy went to a Piper class.
Yeah, that guy went to a Piper class. That guy looked 100%. It was perfect. It was textbook. He was straight down. And I was like, there it is. Right, that proves it right there. It's firsthand on film. You're looking at it right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always say when something, and this is what I had a Piper class yesterday at the gym, and one of the things that I've been doing for the last year was explaining if Piper was unique, like if there wasn't anything like it out there, for myself, I would find it very hard to believe that it's authentic. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you have to understand, I look at everything that I do, I take a skeptic's view of it. I always try and play devil's advocate because, first of all, Piper was not something that I would have just, decided to do it because I'm not a knife guy. If I had a passion for blades, it would have been easy to see, that guy would have developed his own knife style at some point. But for me, it was a case of I only did the research because there was a repetition, there was a sequence, there was a cycle. It kept happening, it kept happening. I keep seeing the same thing. And I only compiled the research from a skeptic's perspective because A, this is not me. B, I'm the capoeira guy. I do handstands and stuff, okay? And so when I present the Piper seminar, I'm actually just presenting evidence and say, look, this is what I've compiled. And if you don't believe me, there's evidence now with CCTV cameras everywhere that people are still using it. So if Piper was unique, it meant I made it up. It's the only thing like it in the world, and that is, I wouldn't accept that. But yesterday I was talking about the pyramid of fighting systems, and as you go up the pyramid, you'll realize that as it gets narrow, all fighting systems have the same four things around the world. If it's a killing system, it should have four things that is predominant in every culture in the world. But as you go down the base of the pyramid, it gets wider and wider, and that's the diversity of different martial arts and martial arts styles that have no relation. Go up the pyramid, you realize all fighting systems are one. So I'm actually trying to look at all fighting systems or killing systems that look like Piper, but haven't met. You see, that's how you know it's authentic. If somewhere in Chile, there's a system that does exactly what Piper does. Somewhere in Nicaragua, or, if you look in someplace in Alabama, for instance, there's sorry, I shouldn't have used that word. It's the first, it's a bit of a sensitive topic right now, but, so if you go to Alaska and discover that the Eskimos have something exactly the same, and then that's how you know it works. So my thing is there has to be a continuity and a connection with all fighting systems that haven't met geographically. But
because it makes sense.
Humans are killing. Yeah, so humans that are killing will do the same 4 things. It's an instinctual thing. So I'm observing this happen. So Piper just one of those things that kind of helps uncover another system like it and say, oh, hey, look what they're doing in Ecuador. I didn't know that they were doing this.
So for everybody listening, what are your 4 qualifications?
Okay, so I just used to throw it out, but then I had to actually look at what is it that you would consider a universal killing concept. So every killing system should have 4 or 5 things. So let's take 4. The first thing should be posture. The posture or structure of the animal or person doing the killing has to be the same. So what does that mean? As well, if you look at a cat, a jungle cat, we look at a tiger, that's a jungle animal, and a lion, that's a more of a savanna type creature. In other words, he has less spaces between. There's more space between trees. Your jaguars, leopards, and tigers are in environments where there's again less space between trees, right?
Right.
You look at those cats, then you look at wolves, you look at bears, structurally different creatures. When they pounce on their prey, and just before they pounce on their prey, all their postures and body structures are the same. So that's the first thing. Now I'm saying with humans, before we kill, our body postures are all the same, and yet we are not built different as a tiger, a bear, and a wolf. Those are 3 creatures that, although they enjoy meat, they are built differently.
Right.
But humans, everywhere around the world, the minute they start killing, and I said, well, if you say killing, what do you mean? I said killing with an edged weapon. Why an edged weapon? It's the only thing that will guarantee penetration and perforation of the flesh in one blow. Secondly, it's the only way that you'll get close to the person in a grappling situation. Don't use a bow and arrow. Don't use a spear. Don't use any tool that gives you range. We're talking about you jumping on top of the human.
Straight
so
primal.
If you look at those things, yeah, straight primal. So the first thing is posture. It's the first thing. Now, what would be the second thing? Well, the second thing would be intent. Intent you can break down into focus, conviction, and non-hesitation. Right?
Definitely.
Then the third thing would be efficiency, economy of movement. How quickly does this creature or does this fighting system close down and hit the target? Again, how many moves does it take from the time you draw your blade till the time you make contact? So is there, do you draw the blade at 10 feet, or is the blade only being shown at about 3 feet? Right, so that's what we call that the activation point. When is the activation point? The activation point would be just before killing and then killing itself. There's always 2 phases I look at: just before you're going to attack, and then when you attack.
Right.
It has to be consistent with creatures in nature. It has to be. Why? Because that's how killing is done. We can't kill any differently to the way a bear kills. It has to be follow those sequences. Why? Because the creature you're killing is probably going to bleed out the same and gasp its last breath the same. If we use implements and tools closest to what animals are using, right? So the fourth thing, and this thing I leave last, the fourth thing that every killing system has, the fourth thing has a study, a very, very basic study of the anatomy of the thing they're killing, meaning that it only knows 3 vital points, and it will only kill you in the 3 vital points. To be efficient, you need to kill. So if you only know 3 things, you're never going to miss those 3 things, because that's all you know. The quality of you being able to hit those 3 things will be of such a nature you can do it blindfolded. Yes. So now that I've put that out there for you, so let's test it out. Let's see if what I'm saying is true. Look at how a lion kills. he grabs the buck from underneath the throat and suffocates him to death. Is that a once-off thing? No, all lions have been doing it. If you want to speak about an evolutionary pattern, understand how they adapted to this, because the strongest part of a buck or a deer or an antelope is its legs. He doesn't have teeth to kill. He doesn't have any poison on him or venom, right? But his evolutionary survival tools were those same legs. So all he knows is how to kick and get away. When the lion grabs hold of him, even though he's upended, his legs will continuously kick. And that's how lions get their throats and their eyes ripped out, because this creature is just trying to get away. Not intentionally trying to kill the lion. So what lions have done is they know one specific pressure point or one part of the anatomy, and they go and they shut off the air. That's all they need to know. They don't need to know anything else. Right? They don't use their claws. They don't use their teeth in the sense of ripping and tearing. It's a chokehold.
Right.
Yeah.
So the lion BJJ's the
He pulls guard.
Yes.
He pulls guard, but he does it all the time, which is efficient. So if you're going to get to the target, you're getting to the target, then you're going to need to figure out how many moves will it take to get to the fourth phase, which is the vital area. In other words, the targeting has to be so on point that you will then kill. If you miss, it turns into a fight. That's how that happens. It's a struggle. Now, how I test that hypothesis is look at what happens when 6 or 7 female lionesses try and take down a wildebeest. They are on the hind section of a wildebeest, and what happens is they're clawing and nothing's happening. They're clawing and biting, and they're literally riding or piggyback riding this antelope, and it's running away as if the thing is on its back. That's what happens if you miss your target. If you don't break down your opponent's structure immediately, that's what happens. You get a lot of hit and misses, which is what happens in the animal kingdom. So any time somebody kills you from a human aspect, you'll see it was done swiftly, it was done quickly, and the victim never had a chance to retaliate. So that's what a killing system is on a global scale.
Right.
So how do I know Piper's a killing system? Well, it has to have those 4 things. If it doesn't have those 4 things, it's just made up.
Right.
So I gave you 4.
No, go ahead.
So I gave you 4 things that you can actually test to see what is a killing system or not. I didn't say Pipe is a killing system. I said it appears to be a killing system because I put that through the criteria that my father gave me before there was a Piper system invented or anything. So my father would say those are the 4 things, right?
Right.
Again, like I said, those were psychos. So I would say, okay, so that's the criteria. Then he said, you take those 4 things, and then you put any new system that claims to be a deadly system, it has to run through those 4 things.
Right.
And you can't leave one out. You have to cover all those 4 bases.
Absolutely. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. Now, you kind of made me think about something when you're talking about the pyramid and how, like, when you get to the top of that pyramid, there's a lot of commonality between, different martial arts. With you personally, how would you say that the Piper that you teach today changed or has evolved from maybe the original set of techniques you had? So when Piper started out, how is it different today than it was in the very beginning?
Okay, it was very different because it wasn't something personal to me. It was literally a carbon copy of an actual Cape Flats bad guy. Like if you see, when me and Lloyd started teaching the first seminars, we were both imitating the bad guy we saw growing up, right? So when I was teaching him Piper, he was literally just copying, the template. So you learned the actual template from me. You could see this in the early videos. Those videos were to show the South African martial artists, this is actually who you're fighting. I didn't know Piper was going to get, where it is today. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. So the early part of Piper looked a lot like it was just movement. People I would just showing movements that I saw growing up.
Right.
Then I combined the movements of 20 guys into one person.
Okay.
So one guy will have, a side step. The other guy would like to do a little shimmer and then a side step and then an overhead step. And then another guy would shoots for the legs and then stabs the ankles, stabs the interior of the thigh and then jump up to the top of the head, a crazy spike like that. And so what I did for the sake of study was bring everything into one person.
Right.
Makes sense.
You just
bringing all the good things into one system.
Yeah, but it was just for study. Like you would see that and be like, oh, so I need to start learning how to kill that, because that is what we face in Cape Town, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the pipe I'm teaching now, it's a lot more personalized because now I have the things my father showed me. Now it looks different because now it's what his dad showed him. Because again, these were men that worked with meat.
Mm-hmm.
They killed animals. My father and my father, his one brother, and his father, they killed people that I know of.
Yeah.
If you see the way my uncle died, he had a body count from Cape Town all the way to the northern part of South Africa. That was Joburg and Pretoria. He had to leave. He had to run away from Cape Town. Like when he left Cape Town, I'm not lying. There was the gangsters actually had a party. They were celebrating, and I thought like isn't that a bit much? Like,
thank God this guy is gone.
Yeah, and
we
then
don't have to
he
worry
ended up,
anymore.
He stuttered, okay, and when he died, these two groups just happened to have a rumble outside his father-in-law's house where he was living. He was running from the law and from I don't know who else, and then he thought it was about him. So I'm just letting you know that it was just like if you two gangs and you see this one guy just going all Batman on you, and then the gangs realize that the only way to survive was to combine your forces because Thanos was going to kill you. That's essentially, that's his story. So, that was sad. But like I said, the way that the early Piper looked, it was the tail actually told me that, if you look at this the image, that image said that, well, that was Piper when it was a localized phenomenon, like when nobody overseas knew what Piper was. So if you lived in Cape Town, that Piper would be relevant. Now I'm teaching something that actually has a lot of my father's and his father's methods in. Now it's a killing system that has universal appeal because you can find what I teach everywhere.
All over the world.
All over the world,
Yeah. So what would you say were the original training groups classes, look like? Would you say that's a lot different from what it is now?
Okay, so we actually had, I've got footage, that I'm going to be trying to convert. You'll actually see some of it on the Piper page where I have like 7 or 8 guys in the class. And then they would learn something that I've never done again. It was called it's called gang attack patterns or formation attacks. The gangs back in the day, they would actually attack in formation, like the Romans and the Zulus.
Really?
I'm not lying. And there's footage of those attacks on our National Broadcasting Corporation. I think if you go on YouTube, I don't know the links. I should just get the description and then I'll send it to you guys. But they actually captured some of this on camera. I'm sure of it. My classes would then show how these guys would use zigzag patterns, flanking patterns with knives.
That's crazy.
So that's my opinion. But then you have other guys that can actually tell you, no, it's, they've seen the same thing. So that's how it's independent confirmation. So you hear other people's stories.
See, wow, that's crazy. It's crazy to
mine was-
march into a fight just like in formation. Like you're just going at it.
With a bunch of dudes with fucking machetes and shit.
Yeah, so they knew exactly what they were doing. And that's what scared me the most. I think when I was teaching in London for the first time, I did formation attack training because there was a lot of guys. And I said, of all the things that I feared the most was when criminals attacked in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would run, like a pack of wild dogs or wolves. They would attack like that. Like there's 6 of them, and then the target's running ahead. Then two guys will run past him. They will run right past him, and then the others would engage, like they'll hit him from the front, and then they keep him busy. And then the guys that went past him start coming in at least 15 seconds afterwards. They timed him at a moment when he was already fatigued. That's when they start hitting. They will come at you and run right past you, on purpose. And then the second guy gets you. Then the other guy comes and you start forgetting, and that's what they do.
You're just getting swarmed
exactly
like a pack of hyenas or something. Like there's no way.
It's the punctuated attacks that freaks me out the most. When they attack, but they don't attack at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They attack and then the other guy lets you see him, and then he just runs away from you, like just past you, and doesn't attack you. Psychologically, it puts you off because he got this close and didn't touch you, but the other guys are starting to stab and punch.
Yeah,
and
it's
whatever.
like a mind fuck.
Yeah, and now they start hitting you from behind, like unguarded targets. That is, like I said, that is what that actually freaked me out the most. I was scared of that thing the most.
Yeah, it's what you can't see and you're not sure of.
Yeah,
Right. When you first started, when you put Piper together and you started having like the training groups and teaching classes, was there anybody that was maybe from a criminal element or just somebody that taught you is like, you shouldn't be teaching people this, or this shouldn't be made public? Did you get any like flack from people in South Africa that kind of had an idea?
So, no. What I did know was I was going to keep it. I wanted to keep it on the down low, and that's why Piper was underground for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Even when Lloyd started speaking about it, on the forums, because he was an IT guy, so he was on these forums all the time. That was way before Facebook and all of that. Here's the thing. The numbers gangs, I know for a fact that they have a special school somewhere in the Western Cape. The name of this place is called, it's a Dutch word, not Dutch, I think it's German. It's called Graafreinet. Graafreinet is about 150 miles north of Cape Town, right? Northwest of Cape Town. It's one of the rural areas, and there's a small prison there, but I know because I heard these rumors, from different numbers gangs, is they don't speak about their knife method. They don't speak about it. They will never. Any guy that's a number will never ever reveal anything about the way he uses a knife. And I knew that was a trade secret. So what I was doing, I knew I was running a risk, because on the Cape Flats you don't kind of divulge this type of material. So if I was doing kickboxing and kung fu, I was safe. But if any of them had to find out, that I was actually codifying something which was supposed to be a secret, they'll try and figure out who taught me or who showed me, and then, But now again, that was in the past. Like if you wanted to kill me, you should have done it then, because since 1994. And I mean, look, since 1994, when Nelson Mandela became president, everything changed. Like the drug scene changed. Like how these people look at these OGs that are in prison, the numbers gangs, the youngsters actually assassinating them as soon as they are paroled, because the youngsters don't want to be told by the elders within a criminal syndicate. So now there's an actual imbalance happening. That's why for the last 4 weeks, Cape Town was the third highest city in the world in terms of murder. I mean, for the last 6 months, we had 2,000 homicides, right? In a city, what, 1.2 million people?
That's crazy.
You know, 56 people die per day, and that exceeds countries in Africa that have ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram.
Wow.
That's why we don't have terrorist groups in South Africa, because they have to take a number and wait in line. Because honestly, like, how are you going to make an impression in Cape Town? If you're going to blow something up, you literally are not going to. You're not going to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
The gangs are killing people every day.
Wow.
And so you understand, like if these guys are preoccupied with one another, they're not going to be looking at me. I think maybe 20 years ago I would have been a threat.
But not now.
Yeah, most of them were using knives at the time, but now everybody's using firearms. But knives still kill more people. It's just we don't speak about it anymore.
Gotcha.
You don't mention it, you know.
Yeah.
And
with you talking about the numbers gang, what's the deal with the number 23? Does that have something to do with that?
Oh no, that is a really interesting story, because I told that on a podcast last week, and it's actually that story is on the Piper page. That happened in 2009. It was February 2009. I just graded the 23rd Guardian, and then I thought, like, that's it. I'm taking a break. Then my father-in-law. So my father-in-law sits me down and he says, "How are you gonna protect the history, culture, traditions, rituals, or whatever of the Piper system?" So I asked him, like, "How do you mean? Like on a CD-ROM? Like what? Like what do you mean?" And he said, "No,
floppy disk."
Yeah, you know, it's like, you know, what does that mean? So you have to remember, he was a former prison warder in Pollsmoor. And he was a prison warder on Robben Island when Nelson Mandela was incarcerated. Okay, so he was a warder, like, in all the prisons, the major prisons in Cape Town. So he said, no, the numbers gangs have been able to they've been around for more than 130 years, and they haven't broken their ranks at all. They're just getting stronger, right? More territory. Nothing has dipped. There hasn't been a decline in their ideology, if you want to put it that way. And so they could compress all the history, all the traditions, all the techniques, all whatever vileness that they believe in a number. So if I say the number 27, you would look at that number 27 or hear the number 27 or just see it scribbled somewhere, and you'd suddenly know all that history just comes rushing in one number. Everything is contained within the number. And he says that is how you actually preserve something. So if you say 27 for life, and then suddenly I know what that means. I don't have to have a whole 300-page essay on, and memorize all the history. You just say 27, and then suddenly that's it. That's enough for me.
Right.
So he said to me, do you have a number in mind since the others are taken? I says, well, there's 23 Guardians in Piper at the time. And so he says, well, that's the number then. Because that's it. That's how I got to 23, because there just happened to be 23 Guardians in Piper, including me.
At the time. Okay.
Yeah. So,
very cool.
So,
that makes sense.
I used to call myself a 23rd Guardian because I would count myself last, and I'm the 23rd Guardian, and then that's how I became 23 Guardians. Like that's my call sign ever since, because that's so February 2009 will actually be, it's a marker that says there was 23 Guardians at that time.
Right.
From 1997 till 2009, we had 23 Guardians.
That makes sense.
So he was the...
I was gonna say, so one of the other things I get too, like, people always ask me, like, consistently, they're like, what's up with 23? And where did the name Piper come from? They're like, what does that mean? What is Piper?
So first of all, my granny, my grandfather's second wife, she's Irish. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So on the Cape Flats, if someone says, if you look at the history in the 1950s, there were two gangs in Cape Town from the 1920s till the 1950s, right? Just two gangs. They were called the Skullbusters and the Globe Gang, as in Globe.
I think I would have liked to have been a member of the Skullbusters. That's a little bit hardcore than the Globe.
So yeah. Well, you guys have the Flat Earth Society. We have the Globe Gang. So, so we were progressive back then, very scientific. So your Globe Gang they comprised your migrant workers, from the other provinces, from the farm areas, rural areas. The Skullbusters, they were descendants of the Cherokee, Apache, Comanche, and your West Indian, Cuban, Indian, in other words, South American and North American Indians that came to the Cape in the late 1800s. So they brought the tomahawk with them. That's how the tomahawk came here to South Africa. They brought that. So
would this have any reason to do what they're called the Skullbusters?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see what was happening there, and the Globe Gang were the guys who used the knives. Obviously, that's where the Okapi was influential. But the Skullbusters used a little tomahawk, and they were dressed to the nines. Like these zoot suits. They were dressed like that, 3-piece suits. They had a little tomahawk. They had a. What is it? It looked like one of them 1930s Bugsy Malone type outfits. Two-tone shoes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Suede tips and stuff.
And the Skullbusters, because the tomahawk, they would be hitting. These were the areas that they would bash you in.
Huh.
And as of course, when these gangs broke up, then these guys became fishermen, or because it was all in the Cape Town harbor, so you were skilled in the art of fishing. So these guys started, as they got older, then they had these knives, to skin fish, because they would catch the fish and then sell it in the Cape Flats, right? They would have a horse and cart, and then the horse and cart would take them to different suburbs, and then they would have a copper brass horn that they would blow. That sound is that thing that they had in the 2010 Soccer World Cup in South Africa, that vuvuzela, that had made this it sounded like dyslexic bees that were angry, and you blow it, and that's exactly what it sounded like. That's why that sound wasn't unique either, because it was a copper horn. So if they would blow it, and then the people would say, the bonesmen are coming. The bonesmen, because their fishing knives, their paring knives, had the thigh bone of a cow or bull. It was carved. The handles were carved from cow bone, and then of course, their daggers were fixed to it, and they used to have little pouches on the side, on the waist or on the ankles, because they were when they would cut your fish and then clean it for you, they would be crouching or squatting.
Right.
So they would pull the knife from the ankles, and then they would cut your fish. And then the bonesmen. Now, so the bonesmen, if they in your neighborhood and you hear like the ice cream man, then they would say the pipe man is coming. The pipe man are here. So the pipe, because of the horn, and then because these guys were so good with the blade, these guys were like really good with the knife, Then they would say, if you're a pipe man, pipe now became knife. It was now synonymous with the word knife. And then they would say, because these guys were so good with the blade, they would say, be careful, they'll piper you. In other words, they'll stab you.
Right.
But the spelling was P-Y-P-E-R. In Afrikaans, that's basically mean paper. It's a pipe is a pipe in Dutch. So I then found a former 27 ex-con, and then he would say that in the prisons they would have these little drills, where they would shuffle, sidestep, shimmer, and stab, and at the end of every stab in the cell, then they would shout out piper. when they were done. And then I just changed the name or the spelling to give it a little bit more of an Irish feel, because my granny was a Jacobs. Okay, she was a family from Ireland, and she was a really sweet old lady, you know. And you know, so that's where, because I gave it a name, and that was the 8th of September, 1997, and Piper was finished. In other words, when I got a name, that was the date.
Wow, that's very cool.
Okay,
it's a very cool piece of history.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you, Nigel. The copy is identified as the Piper knife, but why is that?
Well, 2 reasons. Well, first of all, it's cheap.
So is it like the fruit knife of South Africa, basically?
It's the cheapest, crappiest knife ever.
It really is. I'm sitting here playing with it now. I'm just like, but why?
Yeah. And the reality of the Okapi is that I trained with it because gangsters were using it, and I was like, well, it was easy to acquire. That's the first thing. The second thing, if I must look at the type of knives that I've encountered throughout the years, you know, from actual knife makers, the Okapi is an uncomfortable blade to hold. Very uncomfortable, right? You can say what you want. I just don't like the feel of it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
But I realized that if your knife skill was good, you would turn any uncomfortable tool into an efficient killing weapon.
Truth.
Right? So your knife skill, your hand skill, what we call knife to hand skill, has to be so good that you take a tusk of a rhino and be comfortable with it. So these guys were able to make those kills and make those stabs, you know, hit in the subclavian, pericardial, you know, and they'll hit it with like efficiency, like you saw that video where the French tourist was hit.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a female, because I posted a video of her recovering. It's not a video; it's a picture of her recovering in the hospital. And you know where they stabbed her? They stabbed her right here in the neck, first subclavian, and then right there's a you'll see it's bandage. So he hit it twice or thrice, I think. And so that kind of tells you that with any piece of crap, because they knew where to hit, and they weren't experts, they just knew where to hit. They could hit with a pen, they could hit with a knitting needle, they could hit with a
screwdriver or whatever.
Anything.
Yeah.
You know, so the Okapi actually proves that it's the wrong knife to use for that job. Yet it proved that these guys had such good skill, if you want to put it that way, that they would turn a really cheap piece of crap into an infamous, killing weapon. So nobody has died.
When are we going to see a video of you doing some Piper with a rhinoceros horn? That's what I want to know. That needs to be a thing.
It's because right now I should watch myself, because the rhinos, I don't know, there's one rhino, I think the last white rhino in South Africa is being guarded 24/7 by like 10 guys with like it looks like Israeli Galils.
Wow.
Assault rifles. They're literally protecting, and then the poachers will still get in the enclosures and still kill them. So I don't think it would look good for me.
Probably not. Yeah.
Not
a good PR move.
Yeah, that was one of the things too that I was when Josh and I were discussing about the Okapi and everything. I was like, my reason was, I know that it was easy to obtain, but I also think about it like for a criminal who's going to buy a knife, they have the intent. They're going to use this. I'm going to use this.
Definitely.
And I'm going to use it, and I'm probably going to have to throw it down a storm drain, sewer grate, throw it in a pond somewhere. So I'm not going to go out and buy like a $500 custom knife from the newest, hottest maker. That's not what I want. I want a piece of garbage that I can stab you with, and then I'm going to throw it away and never see it again, hopefully.
And it won't hurt the wallet too much.
Right.
Yeah.
They have the intent. They're good. This is not something I'm going to carry around to show off what a badass knife I have. Like, I'm going to stab you with this thing tomorrow.
It's the same thing. Like I said, it's the African fruit knife.
No, absolutely, something cheap and disposable you can get basically anywhere and throw it away.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Nigel and I have had this discussion before. So when you started out, Piper, it was like, these are criminals, they're mugging people, they're hurting people. And so it was basically a development of how do I stop this? But as you went through it and evolved, and then Piper has evolved, did you ever actually find a way to stop Piper, or is this just something that's completely, once it's in motion, is just unstoppable?
Okay, so let's be honest. So these are my observations. Okay, so anybody that's been in a seminar with me will know that I always look at it from an objective view. I don't try and sell my way as, I really love what I'm doing. I look at it in an objective view and say, this is what I have discovered. Piper was designed to be destroyed by me within a 3-year period. 22 years later, I'm still at it, okay? So this is what I've noticed. The earlier Piper, I would say the first template that you guys saw in the, back in the day, the type of Piper Lloyd was doing, this type of thing.
Yes.
The way that you could beat that, especially if you look at my earlier videos, is that you don't engage when the propeller is, already at full momentum. You don't. You try and jam it as it's about to turn, as it's about to switch off. You don't engage it when it does that. That's using engineering and physics and common sense. Mm-hmm. You don't stop something when it's already 2 seconds into the motion, right? So what I've noticed was Piper needs range. So the earlier Piper needed range, and somebody is doing the dances and stuff. The shimmer was just to distract you from. In other words, you need to fixate on the blade. So any knife defense depended on those 3 things. You needed to know if it was a knife. All right, that's the first thing you needed to know. Second thing you needed to know was in which hand was the knife. And you have to visually see, it's in the left hand or it's in the right hand. And the third thing was it reverse grip or saber grip? Why? It makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Saber grip, saber grip, the blade is dangerous going towards the target. Reverse grip, the blade is dangerous moving away from the target. So you need those 3 things. The first thing specifically, you need to visually determine it is a knife. It's in his hand. It's not going anywhere. So what does Piper do? It uses the shimmer just to visually break up the blade. That's it. That doesn't mean that the blade is invisible or it's not there anymore. It just means that your reaction to that shimmer or to the knife is a second slower. What's the next thing it does? In which hand is it being used? You need to know if it's in the right hand. The knife defense has to follow through where the knife stays in his right hand. Or if it's in his left hand, it stays in his left hand. So what does Piper do? It switches. Now your reaction time is a 1.5 seconds slower, just because you moved it from this hand to that hand.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to figure out which hand it is and when,
exactly.
And figure out how to fight against that.
You can't do that within that range, within the contact range. You cannot be playing around with those decisions. Mm-hmm. So that's all Piper does. So how do I counter that? I don't look at the knife and take his legs out.
There you go.
That's it. Don't look at the knife. But people are fixated on shiny, sparkly, twirling things.
Definitely.
Take
they can
his
kill
legs
you.
out.
Yeah.
Why? So what am I using? Am I using some kind of a magical formula? No. How did the street fighters back in the day fight empty-hand against this type of phenomenon? They just took the guy's legs out, grabbed the knife, and just punched the crap out of him. These were boxers. These were wrestlers.
Right.
That was before karate and judo. So. Again, this is the type of things that my father would show me as a yoke. That's why I love catch wrestling, is because they had a lot of good ideas with regards to engaging the knife, which a lot of people don't know.
Right.
That's the other thing. That's why I love catch wrestling. I wasn't built for it, but I love it because of what it did. It's playing cat and mouse kind of thing. And with Piper, it's like with a snake. It's only dangerous if you don't have control of the head. If you just need to figure out how to get control of the head, and once you have that, you don't have to do much.
Yeah.
But what Piper does, so what Piper does when it stabs overhead, you can take its legs out.
Right.
But you're too scared because of you're watching the knife.
Because what's in front of your face.
That's the problem.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, closing
Later-
that distance, like just the slightest miscalculation, and you're going to have that knife buried in your neck.
Yeah. So again, that's the other thing. You need to have equal or greater intent. Equal or greater intent. So whenever Lloyd was teaching a seminar here in South Africa, in Cape Town, he would always just remind the people that you need equal or greater intent, because people would ask us, like, how do you stop this? And then those were his words. It's like you have equal, you have to meet him at the same level or greater. But that's unfortunately all we could say, and a very small window of opportunity. Like,
Right.
people didn't like the chances, but I'm saying that that's better than nothing.
It's definitely better than
Take
just
those
standing there
shots.
and dying.
Right.
Any hunter in the world, you can go all the way to Texas or Alaska or any other place where Americans like shooting things, and they'll tell you the same thing I'll tell you, is that if you hunt something, you have a small window of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
If you miss that, two things happen. A, your prey gets away. B, your prey gets you. So that is essentially what a hunter will tell you. So a hunter, that's going to be a human hunter, will tell me the same thing everywhere, in every country around the world. So it's the same thing here. You can kill Piper. You just need to, again, I've created it so you could study its attack patterns. And here's the thing, its attack patterns are repetitive. It's sequential. It regenerates itself after a few, even if it seems random. You train Piper so you can find that the calculated random patterns. You can actually say, oh, it's going there. Then from there it has to go there. Why? Because it has to move his weight over his left knee in order for that right side stab or overhead stab to come. So because you've got into the Iron Man suit and actually felt where the weight displacement was. How is he able to stab you? Well, because his knee was here, his hips was moving that way. He did a little thing with his hips. So if a guy shimmers, what happens after the shimmer? Must be a stab.
Right.
You see, so those are the little things that you start calculating. And then you are left with a small window of opportunity. You just need to know when. The Piper I teach nowadays, a little bit more difficult, purely because the body structure of the way Piper's done is in such a way that you don't need your eyes to target. You guys have seen that at the last seminars, that that guy's body structure is just a matter of time, because you allowed him to get in range. That was the mistake. Now that blow is going to come through, whether you block, sidestep, backflip, doesn't matter, because you allowed him to dock with you.
Right.
And then again, so after that seminar, I met up with an old numbers guy. He was like in his 60s, which is rare because they don't live that long.
OG as fuck.
And so this guy was working on a farm somewhere. He was just a farmhand, a very quiet guy, because they all are. If you're an actual real 28 to 27, you're not a boisterous person. You're not a vato. You're not MS-13. They're the opposite. They're very quiet, very subdued. And then this one guy, so we asked him, how do you stop, let's say, that side stab? The one that I showed you, the very tight side stab. He says, well, you don't let him get that close to you. That's the only thing he said. So I'm like,
makes sense.
That makes all the sense.
But that sounds a lot like everything everyone has said. You don't let him get close to you. Yeah. And that's exactly what this guy said. He said, if you are within stabbing range, that guy, there's nothing he can do.
Yeah,
there is absolutely nothing.
That's one of the things about Piper that I think is makes it not only different from some other knife systems, but in my mind, pretty much unstoppable, is the fact that you're coming in with that knife already concealed. It's not like I'm brandishing a weapon and coming towards you. You see me coming. That's the trick. I want to get so close to you without ever revealing the knife. And then by the time you see it, it's
too late.
It was just a glimmer of something, and then you get hit, and then you react, and then you get hit again, and then the downward spiral just starts. You've been stabbed, and it's over. And it's just that fast.
But you actually described an assassination right now. You didn't say, if I had to just listen to that part, you wouldn't have described Piper. You would have described every other bladed attack. Someone just being assassinated. That's exactly what you just described now. Is that didn't have the hallmarks of a popular system. That had the hallmarks of every person being killed with a knife. What you just described.
Right.
So it is so generic, so general, so universal that it's hard to actually tell where that was from.
Yeah, it's the building blocks of it.
Yeah, so again, you get to the top of the pyramid, it doesn't have a name anymore. It all looks the same. It's the same thing.
It's a very tight set of parameters.
Yes, because it's those four things. But again, I tell people, like I said the other day, when you were saying how would you stop Piper, I was like, did you see yourself stab the dummy? Now I asked you, how would you stop Philip Johnson? How would you stop him? You know what you did to the dummy. You felt that intent. You felt that energy. So now you are on the other side, and this guy's coming for you. You coming for you. How are you going to stop him?
So I don't let Philip get too close to me. That's how.
Yeah, that's what I say. I don't see it being stopped. Even if you know what's coming, you're still gonna have to react. So if somebody shimmers up towards your face, I'm not sure that you're not trying to stab my eye. My hands are gonna come up, and as soon as my hands come up, then now that everything's exposed, so side stab, boom, and it's just done.
And then
because you get hit with that, then you flinch.
Goes.
That's it. Yeah. Now he's behind you, and this is tearing out your spine, back of the neck. It's just all bad from the get go.
Good night.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I don't think even if you know what's coming, it's probably still not going to help you.
No.
So this is the other thing that I actually want to tell people, because now you're dealing with a realm, especially in the United States, that is a bad thing. If you look at how people die in South Africa, is that we die with cheap blades. That's how it is. What you have in the United States is that you don't have crap blades. Everybody is trying to make like non-crap blades. Okay, so imagine getting stabbed with one of those. Now here's the thing. I always hear people say, if you get stabbed and then you can still fight on. And I was like, no, you can't. Because the minute you get stabbed once, your health starts to deteriorate after that one stab. You're not healthy anymore. You're not breathing well anymore going in. You weren't. Like if you punched me, you staggered me, but I'm still kind of in the fight. But if you stab me, now my actual life is leaving my body. Now you say, yes, but you didn't know you were stabbed. I was like, yeah, but I'm not feeling well. I just didn't know it was blood. Then it says, oh, you looked down and saw your shirt was red. I was like, no, I felt sick. That's what happens when blood leaves your body. You feel faint.
I think one of the other things is, in relation to like people being stabbed or in some kind of confrontation, somebody pulls a knife and stabs them a couple of times, and they're like, oh, I thought the guy was just punching me.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was being stabbed. I can see that happening, but then you have to take it and put it in the Piper realm. We're just not stabbing just any random places. There are very specific targets that once they're hit, you are definitely going to know that you got tagged by something. You're not going to think it's a punch.
Definitely.
Like, you're not going to take a shot to the, subclavian and think, I just got punched there. That's going to be a whole nother ball game. So that's another thing that makes Piper, I don't know, more deadly than some other things. It has a targeting system where it's aiming for specific targets. It's just not wildly cutting and flailing on somebody.
Yeah, it's not just trying to get a stab in here or stab in there. It's a specific point that makes a difference in the health.
We don't have grab and stab in South Africa. We don't stab randomly. I mean, you saw that video, the guy just stabbed the French tourist, and then it's like, that's it, and she just fell down. And from where I was standing, it wasn't even powerful. You just, hit those spots. He wasn't even good at it. And, and the thing is, you guys felt, because my rule of thumb, which sounds better if I use the original name, my rule of finger, doesn't have a good ring to it, is that if I touched certain areas and it hurt a bit, you add the factor of 100 with the blade, and then that is how easy it is to take you down. If I could take you down just by pressing in the subclavian, just with my finger, and you guys, your legs give in, and imagine how painful that would be.
With a blade.
How crippling it would be if I just touched you with the blade. Remember, nothing was bleeding, Nothing was bleeding. I just touched and you felt, wow, that feels uncomfortable. And I imagine you just stab the guy and he just hits the floor and it doesn't even look. That's why you could do those blows with an okapi, because you didn't hit bone, you didn't hit muscle, So an okapi won't handle the grab and stab where you're just hitting large parts of the upper body. It just won't happen. Mm-hmm. So then it's a crap piece of knife. But because they only need 1.5 inches of the okapi's tip, and then that's all they need, 1 inch, and they're
awesome.
in.
That is crazy. So we've hit about a little over the hour mark right now. So if people are out there listening and they want to learn more about Piper, the Piper system, more about you, where should they go? How should they get in touch with you or go from here?
Well, if those guys are not on Facebook, you could email me at 23guardians@gmail.com. It's, that's probably the most generic title for I have so little imagination. So 23guardians@gmail.com. And then, of course, on Facebook, Nigel E. February. Also, the way that the Piper system is structured is that there's no hierarchy. Anybody contacts me immediately. You contact me first, and then I'll try and get a Piper instructor or guardian closest to where you are. So okay. I work from the top down, not from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. Also, you have your Instagram too, don't you? The 23 Guardians on Instagram.
Yeah, again, anybody could have guessed that. 23 Guardians is, again, I didn't, no diversity there at all. So 23 Guardians, Instagram. It's, like I said, I'm easy to find. And also I'll make time for anybody that inboxes me, different mediums, people asking questions and stuff like that. Because back in the day, there was this mystique about Piper once it hit the US. People didn't really know anything about it. Now we have a voice, so I won't shut up about it. People, again, because it's a killing system, people's mindsets need to be adjusted to the type of language that we're using. And also, you guys know me personally. I don't like cliques. I don't like cults. I don't like little groups of power. Mm-hmm. I try to keep everyone as individual as possible because, again, we're moving up the top of the pyramid. That's not a group effort. You climb that thing alone. For what you're about to experience. So, yeah, anybody that wants to contact me, get hold of me at 23guardians.com. At gmail.com. I am at 23 Guardians on Instagram, and then Nigel E. February on Facebook.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, dude, I super appreciate you coming on here. Man. That was awesome. Like the information you gave out there, that's a lot to take in.
It really is a lot.
Mind blowing. And the history behind everything is just cool to finally hear from the source.
It's
how
awesome
this all came into
how rich
being.
It is in history.
Very cool. Well, Nigel, we're going to sign off, but sir, I really appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I hope to see you guys soon.
Definitely.
Definitely, bro.
All right, take care.
Awesome.